An arrest warrant has now emerged in the public domain against Gautam Adani, one of India's most prominent businessmen. The opposition planning to fire at the government once Parliament's winter session begins. Stocks of the Adani group recovering to some extent on the stock markets to try and get a sense of what is likely to happen next. I'm joined on this broadcast representing the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party at the centre by Dr. Zafar Islam. To give us the opposition's perspective, we have Supriya Shirne, chairperson of the social media team of the Congress Party. I have Brahma Chalani, one of India's leading strategic affairs experts, and I have Vijay Agarwal, who's an advocate in the Supreme Court. I want to go across to Zafar Islam first. Mr. Islam, the opposition is demanding A, an arrest, B, an investigation. Has the government made up its mind about which investigative body you will be deploying to this task and how you intend to respond to these charges that are being levelled against the Adani group?
Well, as far as the allegation which has been made against Adani group is something which Adani group will respond to that. Be it the company which their spokesperson will respond. I will not speak about the on behalf of Adani group, but let me tell you a few things which is very important for everyone to know. That every time there is a parliament session, something definitely is being planned by anti-India forces, which is also being supported by George Soros and those who are actually were responsible for anti-India toolkit. They come up with something or the other so that the opposition has the tool to disrupt the parliament, and that is what has happened time and again. You just do a back testing of last few parliament sessions, you will realize that every time, just before the parliament session begins, they will come up with something so that they can disrupt the parliament. And who's suffering? It is the common man on the street, because every time the legislation, when it gets passed, the beneficiary is the citizen of this great country. But country is suffering, the people are suffering because of the irresponsible behavior of the opposition party.
Okay, Supriya, should I respond to Zafar Islam's opening salvo? This has happened in the past, it's happened again. He says right before an important session of parliament, something emerges which to the government seems like a massive conspiracy to derail the functioning of parliament and somehow put the Modi Sarkar on the back foot. They're saying this is a George Soros conspiracy.
Does BJP realize how juvenile and silly they sound when they say anti-India conspiracies, when they talk about George Soros? What is anti-India is that one of your businessmen has been found with his hand in the cookie jar in no less than the United States of America, where a 2-year probe happened, led by the SEC and FBI, and the Department of Justice's grand jury has leveled charges of corruption, has leveled charges of putting investors in the black hole as far as US is concerned, and bribing officials and politicians here in India. Do you realize the extent of the damage it does to our reputation globally, to our institutional reputation, and to the reputation of the rule of law and order of India? I mean, do you realize how silly the BJP sounds each time they say this? And let me jog people's memories here. I still remember it was that one afternoon when those horrific videos from Manipur had come to fore. The parliament session was about to start. The BJP said this is a conspiracy before the parliament session. It has been 1.5 years since the horrific crimes from Manipur are still being reported. The Prime Minister has still not visited there, and the reality is that you choose to look the other way. Why is the BJP defending Mr. Adani? Zafar Islam is at least on the show here saying, I am not going to defend him. But you look at spokespersons after spokespersons of the BJP, they sound like officials of Adani. They don't even sound like politicians. They don't even sound like members of India's ruling establishment. And the reality, Rahul, and I will take just 10 seconds to say this, with some experience in finance and economy, I can tell you one thing. The SEC has been at the helm of this probe. The SEC and the SEBI have a pact to help each other if any person is being leveled with charges. What is the SEBI doing? The SEBI took 18 months and told the Supreme Court, we have drawn a blank. And after that, levels of the extent of corruption of the SEBI chief has come to fore, and the government continues to stand with the SEBI chief and with Gautam Adani. Is it a coincidence? And I will close my argument with this. Is it a coincidence that country after country, whether it's Kenya, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Australia, America, are finding wrongdoings of Mr. Adani, but he is only safe in India because of Narendra Modi? Is this political or is India's reputation at stake?
Brahma Chalani, you know, Gautam Adani was the one Indian businessman who was looking to take the tricolor and India's aspirations global. From Kenya to Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, the United States, Haifa in Israel, he was somebody who was setting up, you know, the stage for India internationally. And therefore, within the Adani group and amongst supporters of the group, there is a sense that this is a conspiracy to try and trip Gautam Adani and the Adani group, not let them grow internationally, flutter their wings, and somehow try and clip them before they can sail and become international giants. Do you think that there is some merit to that argument? Do you agree with Supriya Srinath when she says, examine the evidence, look at the proof that's been put out, and let's not wave the flag?
The charges against Adani and his associates are quite serious. They need to be investigated fully. They need to be investigated in India because these alleged acts of bribery occurred on Indian soil. Therefore, it's incumbent on Indian agencies to pursue those investigations and, if any evidence is found, to file charges against them. I'm more concerned about the fact that the U.S. has taken upon itself to indict Adani and company on the basis of the fact that Adani Green Energy raised $175 million in the U.S. for a $6 billion investment in solar energy in India. So $175 million, which is quite a pittance, for a $6 billion solar energy plant in India. So the U.S. has used that to, as the pretext to indict Adani and company. I'm more concerned about the implications for U.S.-India relations.
What do you think can be the implications for India-US relations? Do you think it is out of place and uncommon for an amount like $175 million being raised in the US to be used to level these kind of charges, given the scale and size of the Adani empire?
Well, first, the US has long asserted its domestic laws, having extraterritorial jurisdiction. It uses the role of the US dollar as the world's primary reserve currency to assert extraterritorial authority, and it has gone after many foreign entities and individuals over the years. Didn't the US threaten to slap CAATSA sanctions on India some time ago? And hasn't India complied fully with the extraterritorial sanctions the US has slapped on the export of Iranian oil? But in the case of the Adani case, the case is that his company raised $175 million and that he hid the bribery. That, the allegation is that the capital that he raised in the US was used to bribe Indians in India. But the indictment says that the bribery totaled $265 million, so much more than the capital raised by Adani in the US. The point that I'm trying to make is that these are serious bribery charges that need to be investigated in India. The implications for US-India relations are quite serious, because this is not the first case in recent months where tensions have arisen between the US and India. We have seen an indictment against an ex-RAW officer fairly recently. We have seen US-supported regime change in Bangladesh. We have seen how the increasing role of terrorism glorifying Khalistan separatists based in the US and Canada is casting a lengthening shadow on US-India relations and reopening old Indian wounds that go back to the 1985 bombing of an Air India flight. So the issue that I think we need to be asking is that are there some in Washington who are capitalizing on Biden's cognitive decline to do things that actually undercut the promising US-India strategic partnership? That partnership is so important. It's pivotal to equilibrium in the Indo-Pacific region.
Let Supriya Srinath respond to what you're saying. The argument you're making is this fits in, the US indictment of Adani for alleged bribery in India fits in with a pattern of extraterritorial targeting of chosen entities or individuals. the charge that the US was involved in Bangladesh and orchestrating regime change, that there are elements in the US deep state that don't like how the group is spreading its wings internationally, and therefore the effort that's been made to try and trip them down before they grow any further. Let Supriya respond to that.
You know, Rahul, before you say anything further, I think the argument that Mr. Adani is the only one who's flying with the tricolor to take India global is a little too presumptuous, because there has been a Tata group before them,
Sure.
there's been Sunil Mittal before them, there's been the Hero group. I mean, Maruti exports to all over the world. The fact that Larsen and Toubro does work, the fact that Serum Institute does work, the fact that Ambani's, I mean, why excuse them? They're all global giants. So let's not say that Mr. Adani is the only one who's taking business globally. Mr. Adani has the unique exception that whenever the Prime Minister has traveled overseas, and I have a list of with dates, whether it's in Malaysia, Bangladesh, Israel, Singapore, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Tanzania, Kenya, after each of his official trips, Mr. Adani gets big business there. That's the only exception. But to the larger point that Mr. Challan is making, I agree with some of that, but I have only one point to add here. The Indian authorities completely, in a very docile way, accepted whatever was said about Vikas Yadav and Vishal Gupta. But why are we defending Adani? The reality is that very serious charges of corruption. He raised 25,000 crore rupees with Azure Power there. He paid about 2,200 crore in bribes. Allegations. This is the allegation. And please remember, the Department of Justice's grand jury also names an Indian PSU, the Solar Energy Corporation of India, a company that comes under the umbrella of the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. And I find it exceptionally odd, and I find it exceptionally challenging by any common sense sensical person that the charge was led by the BJP by somebody called Dr. Sambit Patra. I mean, he's an MP of the BJP, but he's in charge of Manipur. He doesn't want to speak about Manipur. There have been 3 ministers who've served in this ministry, Mr. Piyush Goyal, Mr. R.K. Singh, and Mr. Prahlad Joshi. Some of them should come forward and speak about it, because some of the state governments that you refer to have all come out in the open and have given clarifications and said this is what it is. We are of the view, investigate everybody, but the investigation has to begin
But
with
that's
Mr.
the
Adani.
point. Zafar Islam,
you
know, people are having to refer to the investigation in the United States because none of the Indian investigative agencies have done their job. The SEBI probe on 22 items, 20 of which are resolved, 2 still ongoing, has been going on for a long time. There's no clarity on that. We're now told by officials within SEBI that they're looking at whether information was withheld while these disclosures were made. You know, the problem, these questions arise because no government investigative agency went out and pursued this case with any passion.
How can you say that they were dispassionate? And this is another allegation you are making without any basis. This is absolutely incorrect on our part, or for that matter, anybody who makes this kind of allegation on Indian institution who is independent, and they are pursuing whatever they need to pursue as per the guidelines, the prescribed guidelines. So it is an unfair statement by anyone who makes this kind of a statement against the institution, Indian institution. Having said that, the investigation has been conducted. They found nothing wrong which is being done by the Adani group. There are many global investors have invested there. They are comfortable. Only merely few bond investors, if they have made this kind of a allegation, or somebody has made this allegation, they need to be investigated. And unless you are proving him guilty, unless if he has been proved guilty, how can you make him this kind of a statement against a man who is doing business with everyone, not only in India but globally? And he's been acceptable. He has been an acceptable, and the response should come from the Congress and the opposition parties. Actually, they were the allegation is that Mr. Adani has bribed these government. Who were the government? Who were in the government? Was it a BJP-led government? It was Congress-led government.
But that's an important point. Let Supriya Shrinath respond. From Chhattisgarh run by Bhupesh Baghel to Andhra Pradesh run by Jagan Reddy to Tamil Nadu run by your alliance partner DMK, except for Jammu and Kashmir, the union territory which was administered by the centre, the other charges are against state governments run by opposition-ruled parties, including the Congress.
Fair point, but I will first fact-check my friend Zafar Islam here. Zafar, after 18 months of the Supreme Court asking the SEBI to investigate, the SEBI in a written affidavit signed by no less than the SEBI chief said that we have drawn a blank, and only after that Did facts come to light that she was invested in funds that were associated with Adani? She had conflict of interest with companies whose ruling she was passing. She was trading. She had ESOPs of companies where she had given judgment. So please, let's not go there, because the Supreme Court was actually in many ways manipulated by the SEBI, which said we have drawn a blank. That's point number one. And point number, I will come to you, they will come to you for a response. Please wait. You are talking about institutions. The Department of Revenue Intelligence wanted to probe Adani on over-invoicing. You know who stopped them? Your government. And your Ministry of Finance told them not to pursue that matter. That matter landed in the court. So please do not take this matter elsewhere. The jurisdiction is with you, and you have refused to do anything. On the question that you're raising, Rahul, it's a very important question. That question needs to be dealt with. We have said if there is any wrong, probe everybody, including our chief ministers. But both Mr. Stalin and both Mr. Bhupesh Baghel have come out. I'm talking about these two, and then I'll talk about the rest. Have come out and said this was done by the previous governments. We've got nothing to do with it. You are free to investigate. You are free to probe. That talks a lot. But as far as Jagan Reddy and Naveen Babu are concerned, we know exactly who they were protecting all along in the last 10 months. And J&K was being managed by the center. It was an administered union territory managed by you. But I will go back to the point I was making. The first round of bribes happened at the Solar Energy Corporation of India, an enterprise of the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, because they could not sign power purchasing agreements because power was very expensive. They took bribes and in turn paid bribes. Something has to be done about this company, which is a direct PSU under the central government.
Zafar Islam wants to make a quick counter, and then I go to Vijay Agarwal. Go ahead.
Along with Gautam Adani and people.
I need to ask.
Just to put the record straight.
I need to ask my friend Supriya that 100 crore donation to Telangana Congress by Adani Group, was it donation or was it a bribe? Can you just respond to that? Second, the UPA government has given projects worth 1 lakh crore during 10 years of their regime to Adani Group. Was it on the basis of bribe they have taken, or it was on the basis of merit of the Adani Group? I mean, there are many things which needs to be answered by UPA government, needs to be answered by Congress regime, because he has become a big businessman under the leadership of the either Congress chief minister or supported by UPA government. And she was talking about he visited with whenever the prime minister visited, he also visited those countries. Didn't he visit when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh visited with many countries? Didn't he visit as a businessman?
Okay. That's the response. So I want to go across to Vijay Agarwal now. Here's the point. Just 1 second, Supriya, I'll come back to you. Now there is an arrest warrant against Mr. Adani. It's not new. It happened last month. It's been made public now. So it's available. It's been unsealed in the US court now. So that's how this is known. What does that mean from a legal perspective in terms of what happens next? This is stage 5 of this case. Then there's stage 6 and 7. And how does this impact things like Mr. Adani's ability to raise finance internationally or travel internationally?
My understanding is that somebody, though I do not have personal access to any of the classified information, somebody read to me those lines. It says that there is a warrant for, though I doubt that information, people are saying that it's in public domain. It reads that there is a warrant of arrest for obtaining documents. My understanding is that for these things, the procedure is later rogatories. It is not as if like a James Bond movie, somebody will come with the handcuffs and jump on the plane, then going to pick some person. There is no such arrest warrant like this, as far as my understanding goes. And I have done these cases. Nothing of that sort happened in a Mehul Choksi case, Nirav Modi case. It never happens, number one. Otherwise, there would have been warrants in Canada for who's who of this country, the way Canada is doing. So no such warrants are being issued. And Rahul, if you look at the judgment, this 54-page document which is floating, I find it ludicrous. It is just an indictment. Please look at para 45 of this document. It says that $2 billion profit was to be made. And para 49 says that the bribe paid is 265 million. On a financial calculator, if you put 265 million at a 10% rate of interest, one would make 2 billion. So it is ludicrous that why will one pay a $265 million bribe so that one makes in 20 years this 2 billion. So the one would deposit the money in the bank. So this is one thing. And the second thing is that it is only an indictment. That happens in coal scam. The ex-prime minister who was holding the charge of the Ministry of Coal was also indicted. Nothing happened. So it is only an indictment. People are speaking as if there is some conviction. I'm sorry. And people are saying there is a bar on the travel. One needs to understand it legally. I mean, one need not just talk for the show or for a coffee table book. For some travel restriction and business restriction, the procedure is Interpol, which issues the RCN. There is no such RCN. Had there been an arrest warrant, it would go to RCN. There is an Interpol office in France, Lyon. So they coordinate and they put a travel restriction, they put a business restriction. They issue a blue card notice for the information whether the person is passing port, and they will issue the red notice so that the person is not able to travel. So it is only an indictment in the business and in a geopolitical...
This is important to remember as well, that this is the framing of charges, as it were, in an Indian context. This is not a conviction, and there are many cases where there can be a plea bargain, you can settle out of court. In the manner in which the opposition has taken it up, it almost seems as if you are convinced that he is guilty ultimately, and even the court documents say so, that everyone's innocent till they are proven guilty, and this case is still to go into trial.
With all due respect to the argument that you just made and I heard, I hope and I wish Indian media starts applying some of that to when these charges are leveled against politicians. I mean, 2 chief ministers, democratically elected chief ministers, were jailed on charges. They were jailed, one of them was jailed through the Lok Sabha campaign, wasn't even allowed out. And this similar bonhomie wasn't shown then. This similar broad-mindedness and, refutal of these are only charges wasn't shown then. But I want to just make a very small point. And that point is on what Zafar Islam said, that Mr. Adani became big. Let me just give you an example in the next 30 seconds and let the viewers be the judge of what has happened with Mr. Adani. Mr. Adani wanted NDTV, CBI raids NDTV, Mr. Adani acquires that. CCI raids Ambuja Cement is acquired by Mr. Adani. ED raids GVK Airport comes to Mr. Adani. IT raids Quint is bought by Mr. Adani. Income tax raids Nellore Krishnapatnam port, that port is acquired and bought by Adani soon after. It doesn't end there. There are about 10 companies, and I will not waste your time taking through some of them, but the companies like Lanco, Amartech, HDIL, Radius Estate, these are companies that owed about 62,000 crore rupees to banks in India. These companies end up in the NCLT. Mr. Adani pays 16,000 crore rupees. The due amount was 62,000 crore rupees. He pays 16,000 crore rupees and he gets all of these companies at pittance. This is all happening at the behest of the Indian government. This is happening with the help of the CBI and the ED and the income tax, which is raiding. I mean, Shree Cement wanted Sanghi. How blatant can another example be? Shree Cement was raided, out of the race. Sanghi was bought by Mr. Adani just a few months back. And I would want to point out here, because I did not want to embarrass my friend too much, but I do want to point out, 2015, Mr. Modi goes to Bangladesh. August 2015, Mr. Adani wins a contract there. Malaysia, same pattern. Singapore, same pattern. Israel, same pattern. Sri Lanka, same pattern. Nepal, same pattern. Tanzania, same pattern. Kenya, same pattern. Till Kenya cancelled it. I want to ask you a question. And I think, forget about us being from political parties and journalists and experts. As Indians, my head hung in shame when I saw the Kenyan president get up and address his house and the loud cheering that happened when he announced the cancellation of a project. Mr. Adani represented India there, and my head hangs in shame that his project had to be cancelled on charges of corruption, and there was loud cheering from Kenya. This is what you are doing to India. You are doing a lot of damage to our capital markets, to our corporates, to our reputation, and to the whole assumption of rule of law and order in this country.
Let Brahma Chelani chime in on this. The Kenyan president cancelling the airport project, the power project, what do you make of that? I mean, ultimately, these are charges. The charges haven't yet been proven. There is no conviction. And yet, on the basis of the leveling of the charges itself, the Kenyan president cancelling this kind of a high-profile contract. What do you make of that, Mr. Chelani?
Rahul, there's an old saying, trade follows the flag. It's common for world leaders to travel to different countries and seek transactions. Don't American and Western leaders come to New Delhi and back contracts for their own companies. So there's nothing wrong with Indian Prime Minister, whether it's the current one or the previous ones, seeking contracts for Indian companies. Having said that, the issue in Kenya was different. For a number of months, in fact, for the last couple of years, there was a major controversy in Kenya about one of the contracts, in fact, about two contracts that relate to Adani. So this indictment by the US came handy to the Kenyan government to cancel those contracts. These contracts would have been canceled even if there had been no indictment by the US. But I think on the issue of the indictment against Adani, we should not forget that the future of the Adani case will hinge on what line the incoming Trump administration will take. After all, as the New York Times says, it really depends on Trump whether he will pursue this case or not, because this is a politically driven case. But
you put out a post to say the US indictment of Adani for alleged bribery in India fits with a pattern of extraterritorial targeting of chosen entities or individuals. Why is Mr. Adani being chosen to be targeted in this fashion, in your view, Brahmacharani?
Well, there are several reasons for this, but we should not forget that the US and India are close strategic partners. Shouldn't they be working together? Are they working together in India's own neighborhood? If India and the US were working together, India would be surprised by indictment against an ex-RAW officer. India wouldn't be taken by surprise by this indictment against Adani. If bribery took place in India, the US, as a close strategic partner, should have taken India into confidence, should have told India that an indictment is coming. Instead, India was taken by surprise. Now, even in India's own neighborhood, the Biden administration has pursued policies in South Asia that it knew were injurious to India's core interests. It is telling that today, Washington is coddling military-backed governments in Bangladesh and Pakistan while seeking to overthrow Myanmar's military regime. So you look at the contradiction in American policy, and this has implications for India's internal security as well as for its economic...
Brahmacharani, Supriya Srinath cited multiple instances where companies were raided by some agency or the other, whether it was a GVK, whether it was, say, NDTV, whether it was ACC, and in each of those instances, by happenstance or by design, it's the same group that went and bought over key components of those groups in different ways.
Respond to this.
Yes, you must.
Can I respond to this?
Yes, the question is to you.
Okay. So first, let me respond to Supriya Srinath. What she said that her head is, she's feeling ashamed that one of the businessmen of Indian origin has been indicted by Supreme Court. No, let me. So my question to her, that she's taking very moral high ground here, but when the Indian government and during UPA was everywhere in the world seen as a government of scams and scamsters, there was a policy paralysis. There was a political party, Congress, where scamsters, they are addressed as a scamster because every now and then there were new scams were coming up. And the whole world had stopped investing in India, and Indian government had stopped functioning. And there was a policy paralysis. How she was feeling at that point in time, how the Indian was perceived at that point in time, and how the Congress party was perceiving the Indians feeling at that point of time. I think she must respond to that. Was feeling the same? Was she feeling ashamed, or her party was feeling ashamed, or Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi was feeling ashamed? Who is on bail for bribery or...
Okay, I'm running out of time. Supriya wants to make a quick final point.
No, one last thing. The question which you said that he was getting it. See, a businessman, if he has the ability to raise capital and there is an opportunity, he will always deploy those capital. The big question is whether he has the ability to raise capital. He has the ability to raise capital, and he has the capital. He will put to use those capital. It's the growth capital which he has been raising from across the globe, and he is putting it to use. Whenever there is an opportunity, anybody could buy it. There are many NCLT cases, and who had given those loans?
It is the Congress
government who had given those loans. without doing a proper due diligence, without doing a proper credit evaluation.
Okay,
Through the
so Supriya Srinath, if you were to speak to somebody in the Adani group, they tell you that they grew
all through this
extremely fast during Congress regimes as well. So this is not something that's dependent on just the BJP being in power. The true growth from a very low base actually happened on your watch. I'm also running out of time, so final comments, please.
All through this show, I have not made one hearsay comment. I have quoted numbers, I have quoted companies, I have quoted dates, I have quoted instances. All that the BJP can do is make these grandiose statements. Numbers tell a very different story. The reality is that the gross fixed capital formation is at a 15-year low in this country. The reality is that FDI has been slipping now for 16 quarters. So people are not willing to invest in India. Sir, and the reality is from New York Times to the WSJ to the Financial Times to the Washington Post, each of them quote Mr. Modi when they talk about Mr. Adani, a businessman close to Mr. Modi. And the hard truth, Rahul, is that Mr. Adani went from 638 in 2014 on the list of rich businessmen to number 2 on the watch of Prime Minister Modi, and thanks to all the help that came from him. क्योंकि इस देश में एक ही सेफ है और वो गौतम अडानी है नरेंद्र मोदी की कृपा से.
Final words, Zafar Islam.
Rahul, I think...
Why should we have the final word? Why must I not have the final word? I thought you told me before my answer that I was going to have the final word.
We are wrapping up this debate. I want you to make the final words. Now, Zafar Islam. Zafar, quickly.
I think the question which I have posed to
now me,
she should answer those questions.
You told me I was going to have the final word. Now you go back to him to have the final word.
Why are you disturbing me?
Okay, let him speak. Supriya Srinath. Okay, I'll come back to you for a break. Let him speak and make his argument. Zafar Islam.
All I'm saying that he is a businessman. What is his responsibility? To grow his business. When he is growing a business and he needs capital, the growth capital is available across the globe. And if is able to access those capital, he is investing here. This opportunity came because of the wrong practices being followed by the UPA government. Those loans were given by the UPA government or at the behest of the UPA government to all these companies.
Okay.
When they didn't deserve to get those companies.
Okay, very quick final words.
Just a second. The EBITDA, so the way every loan is actually evaluated, that it should be EBITDA positive. In this case, 66% of loan given during UPA was EBITDA negative. That means never generate cash flows and
okay, Zafar Islam, you've spoken and I'm really out of time. So Supriya Srinath, let's make this quick. Okay. Okay. Zafar, you've spoken. Zafar,
she has to respond. How those loans were given, on what basis those loans were given, unless they had accepted.
Okay, Zafar Islam, you've spoken. Now your fader goes down. Supriya Srinath, very final words. Yes.
It's on you. Zafar Islam has gone ahead to prove exactly what I said in the beginning of your show in my first answer. Why is the BJP out to defend Gautam Adani? He has a conglomerate, let him defend himself. The reality is the man has been found with his hand in the cookie jar. Mr. Modi and his entire party, government and agencies are out to defend him. That smells foul play. The world is investigating him, but India will not touch him with a barge pole because Mr. Adani wants to be kept safe by Mr. Narendra Modi. एक वो ही safe है इस देश में और ये सच है.
Okay. Parliament starts Monday. BJP spokespersons have said that the government will investigate. It will be important to see what form and shape the investigation takes. We will track this story closely.